My guest today is a professional juggler, the first professional juggler we've interviewed on a Vietnam podcast. He has worked for Cirque Du Soleil, producing shows for them, and is now the director of Lune Productions, which produces the AO show, if anyone...
45, 50 years ago, after the war, the people are still afraid of not having enough food, but nowadays it's changed, things, right.
But I guess it's an interesting point that obviously not being from here for very long and obviously not during that time, I hadn't thought about. Do you think that's ingrained then in the psyche here of still lingering thoughts from the war? And even up until the 80s and 90s, there was still kind of massive famines and things like that. Do you think that still lingers in people's minds?
Yes, of course. There's still, and it's the point is not about like they are just making sure that they would have enough. But I don't know what is enough for you. How much is enough? I think nowadays, of course, the food is important, but I think much more important that people need to drink enough clean waters, every day. The water, for me at that point already, that's the acrobatic or the skill you have, just the tools that you can be able to use this to tell some message or story, and the idea of to have a concept of theatrical performances combined with all the elements, music, dance, acrobatic, and of course myself, I was a juggler at that time also, already was kind of the vision and the dream I would like to work on it, as a young boy in Berlin. And then of course it's very important that I was very lucky to be able to meet so many great and unique and international artists who was working at that time in Berlin, from the very like underground cabaret into the very high class classical variety theater and I was looking and searching. I was more or less like a very curious person, and I think I'm still now today. Everything new and is undiscovered. That is where I really get my interest into this, because it's more or less until now, whatever I have been create and in Vietnam for the last almost 10 years is I try to create a dream, something is not really existing in life, but that dream is about to share to the audience that, okay, when they come into the theater, for example, into the Saigon Opera House or Hanoi Opera House, or even when my show performing at the Sydney Opera House or in Oman or wherever the show is performing, that when the lights come down, that my dream will begin, and that will guide the audience into a world that after the show that they would have a positive energy, and they would like, wow, this is something that maybe have the impact and would inspire the audience, for them after they go out, and they would just not about talking about the show, but they would have like a positive feeling, and something that maybe that could help them for the next days of their life, that this life could be very beautiful if we can create something, and that we can take care about something that would have a direct emotional connections, between the art piece and the audiences. Yeah.
You just listening to you has almost put me into like a dreamlike trance. It's inspirational to hear, because I've been to the AO show thanks to you, you invited me, and we loved it. And then now you explaining that is making me kind of remember it and then think about, yeah, like the lights go down and then you just become entranced with the performance on stage. And as someone who's not really a performer and not artistic at all, I never thought about what you said there. Really struck a chord about like using your skills to tell a story. So juggling on its own is like just a skill, right?
Right.
But then you can then put that together with your vision and with other skills and obviously then the art of the stage and the art of the production, and you can put all these things together and suddenly you tell a story. And at the end of the day, right, that's what all of life is human beings. We tell stories, whether it's to friends, whether it's on a podcast, whether it's a marketing tool. You know, we I don't want to be too deep, but we make meaning from life through the stories that we share. And so I think that's amazing to just, I'd never really thought about that, going from the skill of juggling to then putting together a dreamlike story on stage. That's really amazing.
Yeah, and I think even like with your professions, you know, so you are telling a very concrete story, you know, about something specific. But for me also is also doesn't matter if the audience would understand the story you want to tell. But the more important is that they have to feel it. You know, they have to feel like what is the purpose, why you are telling that, and then this feeling is more for me more important than the understanding. And I think this is what is so beautiful when we work with performing arts, you know. And of course I think maybe that could happen to you, you know. You are a very well known stand-up comedian, you know, and I was lucky that you also invited me to your club, you know, the other night in Saigon at the Hard Rock Coffee. But I think yes, my English is okay, but I would imagine, you know, if my English would not be that okay, I could still sense, you know, I could still feel like, okay, what is happening on the stage, you know, why these people, and even the reactions of the audience also could invited me into the environment that I may cannot understand 100% completely English. But of course, this is the magic, I would say, of live entertainment. What we are facing right now in a very difficult time, you know, we cannot have like a direct contact with our live entertainment and reaction with the live audiences, you know. Of course, with the video like live stream also something, but it's not. It is like in live performances for me is always something very different and unique. And the unique of that moment, you know, sometimes you cannot even recreate it, you know. Even you do the same thing, you know, because the emotion of the performer or how you feel on that night, you know, you tell about something. Of course, there is certain like key moment that people would laugh, you know, but the way you perform that every day, I think is would be very differently, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So when did you come back to Vietnam? How long had you been away?
I've been over 22 years, and now is my it's already I'm already 9 years here, almost 10 years. That's incredible, almost like a decade. I could.
And when you returned to Vietnam, how was your Vietnamese?
Very bad. Yeah, I tell you a story. I create like the first creation and production. It was more like a collaboration with the Vietnamese circus artist in Hanoi, and I was I think 23 years old at that time. That and we did like a project within like a few weeks, you know. And I have a really hard time to sometime, not all the time, but to express myself to the artist, like what I actually want, I see that way they could do, and sometimes it's come into like a moment that the artist also struggle quite a lot because they even didn't understand like what this man want to say. It's like yeah. And then I didn't continue to work to get more perfection in my Vietnamese, but I decided to find a different way, you know, to have a discussion with them, and that works, in terms of I explain, I do something, and that they would understand. I think it's more about understanding. And of course the easiest one is when you exchange by words, but the other way you can also like exchanges by your body language, or even by your behaviors, the way you tell,
Well, we've beaten this horse to death on this podcast. We talk about all the time about how difficult Vietnamese is. But for anyone who doesn't or thinks that we're overplaying it, you've just heard that a person who was born in Vietnam and speaks Vietnamese still had difficulty after being out of the country, being understood by his fellow countrymen. That is how difficult Vietnamese can be. But I think also what you mean is the kind of cultural exchange as well, right? So you maybe, after being away for so long, had learned like a different way to talk to people. And from what I know in Vietnam, there's a very different way that we do that.
Right. And even nowadays, I still struggle sometimes with my written Vietnamese, because the way how we write in Vietnamese is sometimes different than the way how we talk. Yeah. I mean, like I have this experience, in Bulgaria, when they like something, they would shake their heads like they don't like normally.
Yeah.
And the opposite also. If they don't like something, they just shake their head up and down like they really like, and it's an okay. And this is like really crazy. I was there for like like I think like 2 weeks, and every time, and they saw my act, and sometimes I have a moment to look at the audience, and they just shake their heads. They say like no. It was like, I think it's like that's one of the moment I remember at this point.
I'd never heard that one before. But
Yeah.
that's similar to here in Vietnam. If you want to beckon someone to come here, you do this with your palm face down, and you kind of wiggle your fingers to come here.
Right.
Whereas, like in the UK, anyway, where I'm from, that would be quite rude to say to somebody, "Come
I
here."
know.
But here, so that's just these small things, all right. But you're like,
Right.
you grew up in a country, you just think the way that you're brought up is the only way that things are done. You don't realize that even maybe just the country next to you, it might be done completely differently. So, final question. What advice would you give to somebody who is thinking or who's coming to Vietnam?
I think just open up your mind, open up your heart, discover. You will be, especially if you are a guest, a new guest, you are mostly will be very welcome by Vietnamese people, because they are very like welcome and friendly to even guests, even like not directly that they know, and they are very supported, for people who visit and travel in Vietnam, and discover the landscape here, discover the country along the water. What I'm still doing nowadays, if I have the chance. There's so many places in Vietnam which are very beautiful that you should discover. Of course, the food. That I would recommend anyone. And I did already few friends who come to Vietnam because of my recommendations, and they always keep saying like they would come back anytime again.
I still need to get my swimming shorts from you. I left my swimming shorts in a hotel in Hoi An, and Tuấn picked them up for me, and I was meant to get them like a week later, and that was about 3 months ago. Now that was the last time I did a comedy show up there.
Yeah, I think your swimsuit, colorful swimsuit, is still here. So people looking at me a little bit weird, like, what is this guy coming to get the colorful swimsuit from a?
They were pink. They were bright pink swim shorts. Yeah.
Exactly. Wow.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry I embarrassed you. So before we finish, tell people.